The next topic is about product versus service innovation, and I want to kick this one off with a small story. If you think about a physical glass, is that a product or is that a service? And when you play out traditional theory, you'll see that it is tangible. It weighs something. The construct itself is well designed. You've got use. That means that there's nothing intangible about a glass that has been manufactured in a certain way and it will then be used by people. But if you think about the process behind it and you think about the concept of a service, when the glass performs a service, you need to look at it entirely differently. So let's just first of all play it out as a product. So what you do is that you take a concept called frozen knowledge. So you take a formula and a formula of making glass. You then take that formula. You then decide that you want to build a factory to implement this formula or this frozen knowledge. And you then make a capital investment in setting up a physical environment. So that means that you'll try to determine the volume of output, you'll determine what kind of raw material you would need, and all the constructs that you work with are fairly well described. I mean, there's nothing fuzzy about the fact that you want to use a certain tonnage of sand and of soda ash and all the inputs that you would need, and there's a certain temperature that the furnace is going to burn at, and that means it can produce a certain number of glasses that will get to market at a certain point, and that means that you will make the investment in a raw material, and that raw material will be stuck through this particular manufacturing facility and then produce an asset that you will then sell to somebody else. So the concept of a product plus how it gets manufactured and how it gets used is something that is fairly well described, and it's also fairly well known. But if we turn the story on its head and we see that the glass as a service, the glass is actually just a container. So if the glass is a container and I want to make sure that I can use it properly, I can decide what I put into the glass. So the service that it would perform for me when I drink a glass of whiskey, or what it performs to you when you drink a glass of water, is actually exactly the same service using two entirely different constructs. The person that produced the glass has got no idea how it got used. Let's go a step back. When I manufacture the glass, I can actually calculate to fairly accurate as to the investment that I've made in the particular invention, because I acquired the frozen knowledge. I might have acquired patents and of whatever sort to build this factory. I know exactly the price of the tonnage of sand and of soda ash and the like. I know exactly what it's going to cost me to build a factory. I know exactly what my payback period will be over a period of time. I know exactly how many glasses I can produce. I know exactly what it's going to cost me to ship those. So that means that I can then deal with a financial construct that will help me to deal with a concept called markup. So I have a base price, a base cost, I mark it up and I sell it to the market. So that means that if I want to make more money, all I would have to do is sell more glasses. It's a fairly straightforward business model. That means that I will develop my strategy to say that I just have to get more depots in more places, convince more people not to use tin but to use glass. All those constructs playing out in a product world is very different than if you think about it in a services world. So let's just take Google as the glass. If Google is a glass, what they do is that they give you the glass for free. They say to you, even though we have invested all this money in manufacturing just one glass, that glass being, say, a search engine or an email facility or whatever product or service it is that they're selling to you, they give you the right to consume the glass as a platform. So in the services world, what we're seeing there is that you take product and you turn it into an experience. And you then decide how you're going to make money very differently than what you do in a product world. So let's just go back to the Google example. So in the Google example is that they give you the product for free as a service. The way that you then use this product is the way that they will then make money. So they make money through the advertising. So what they do is they separate the economic customer from the participative customer. In a product world, it's straightforward. There is just a customer. In Google's sense, what they need to do is to convince you to use more of their service so that they can make more money from an economic customer. So this is really the overriding construct, and the construct goes like this, is that if you are using a service for free, then you are the product. So how Google then builds the business model is to say that I give you the glass for free, I get you to drink out of the glass for free, but I'm going to put a sticker on the side to say that sponsored by Coca-Cola, sponsored by Nike, and they're willing to pay for you to drink out of the glass. So that means that on all fronts, the inventions that go into designing a products business and deciding how I'm going to reinvent something and commercialize it versus how I'm going to do it in the services business are entirely different. They must be used in entirely different ways across different commercialization models. So the key players in the services world, if you think about it from a humanistic only point of view, is the fact that you've got a human interface to your customer, where in the product world you don't necessarily have that. You have not met the person, and I hope not, that have invented Colgate or the glass. But you might have met the person who came up with a banking service that has got a particular mobile device to market. So what we're seeing, though, is the fact that the kind of people who get involved in the services world are much wider, much more interested in understanding the wider use of a service, much more humanistic, much more engaging than what you have in a product world. The product world will use its branding capabilities to make money, where in a services world it's reputational, even though brand reputation is an important issue, but you're much more worried about how the human behaves in the one setting rather than the other. So the idea behind the funnel that we spoke about earlier is that if you have a funnel model in the services world, you don't necessarily then know how many of those ideas will be relevant across, because whichever market you're going to focus on, because you're focusing on the economies of scope rather than scale. Where in the product world, you take a single idea with a single focus, with a single output, and you commercialize it and you make money entirely off scale rather than scope. So the way that you can then play this out, and if you can just look at this quickly, is that both those concepts set context slightly differently. So context gets set for your innovation environment, firstly by saying that if I've got a services organization, business model is typically more important than in the products world. So let's just look at two areas. The one area is to understand the type of innovation that I want to use. So if I want to use a type of innovation called a product innovation rather than a process innovation. In a product world, these two concepts normally play out together. So if you look at Atterback or any of the previous researchers have clearly shown that when a product goes to market first and it's not been produced many times, you then have a product that the process will be invented alongside the product. That's why if you think about the drug industry, the very first antibiotic will cost you $1 billion US. The one that you produce 1/millionth of them will then cost you just a few cents. So in a services world, you don't necessarily have product, but you've got a thing called an offering. An offering means that I've got a collective of activity, because in the things that I sell to the market externally, is encapsulating who I am and what I represent and all the other elements inside my business. The process, on the other hand, is in the services world, is a capability. And a capability is something that says that I have got not just a process of knowing how I'm going to engage with you, but I also have the intellectual capital. I've got the human intellect and the human element that's going to then take that to market. I don't just have a process. Because if I produce in a drug world, say one drug tablet, there are hardly any humans involved in the processing of those, in the manufacturing of those devices. But if I deliver a banking service to a client, I've got lots of humans involved. I've got many humans who interact with people and drive the customer element. So you really have this sort of key play. The next thing is to understand the impact. And the impact really is to see, well, what kind of innovation strategy would I drive to get this successful? And I'm just going to look at two for now. So let's just look at incremental versus radical. So the idea is that incremental related innovations means that I'm moving in small chunks from one stage to another. In a product world, it's fairly simple. I move from version 1.0 to 1.1, 1.2. I've got a clear roadmap, a clear path. But I don't know what version of banking credit card you're using. Are you using your Visa 2.0, 5.0, 9.0? There is no version. It's entirely designed as a platform. So when I reinvent a service, you don't often have this discreteness and the exactness of what you have in the product world and commercializing. The same thing when it comes to radical. Who last radically invented any of the core services concepts? Banking was designed in its current form probably around the 1400s, and the coin, as we know it, was designed 1610 BC. It's not changed since then. But the services model to commercialize it has radically shifted. You relied on an invention in a product world to drive innovation in the services world. So across a number of fronts, you find that there are difficulties in combining the product and services innovation. So I think that what you should be careful of is to say, well, I've just got product and service innovations, because it doesn't really work like that. They're very different. They require different approaches.